Well, Desmond, you've held me spellbound. It was very, very beautiful. This second subject is one that I always think of whenever I think of England, because it was the first insight I had into what one might call the characteristic English qualities. It's curious how music will often divulge it more than appearances may. And that came 3 years after I'd already come to England. I'd first come in when I was 13 and 29, and although I loved the country, I didn't, of course, as a young boy, couldn't fathom those intangible qualities which make the people and the country what it is, until I was asked to prepare the Elgar Concerto, and at that time I was studying with Enescu, and when we came to this melody, he said, "Now that is peculiarly English." Of course, those words fell on an ignorant mind at the time, ignorant of what was peculiarly English, and yet I have been trying, as you played it, I've been trying to define, as one would like to when one has to speak about music, which is in any case a difficult matter. And it's precisely those elements that cannot be put into words. I mean, you can speak of German music as solemn, as square, as strong or unified in conception. You can speak of French works as sensitive, transparent, etc. But if you try to define this, it has a little bit of everything, and it is a quality which Elgar tried himself to put into words, because there's very little music that is as heavily marked as this concerto, because he was attached to every note and wanted every note played in a particular way. Of course, if you asked him anything about it, he couldn't tell you. I mean, he wouldn't want to speak about it. But in his music, he's tried to define it, and even that is difficult to understand. What it is, I think, is both the tenderness, the nostalgia, the innocence of it, certain lack, simplicity, a lack of, how should I say, of self-assertion. It's very interior, isn't it?
It is indeed.
And then the fact that the notes don't follow each other metronomically at all. I mean, they shouldn't ever, I feel, even in a perpetual motion, except perhaps there we might allow it for the sake of the argument. But here, every one of these notes is heavily laden with something that you might call almost speech, isn't it?
Yes, indeed.
As you speak those notes, you wait before some, you hold others, you reflect on a few. You did that, and that is the way, I'm sure, the music is meant to be played. And the funny thing about it is that it's a quality that isn't necessarily understood by other nations. It is peculiarly English. And Enescu knew it, even though he was a Romanian, but he had traveled like all violinists are forced to travel more or less from time to time, because no one tolerates them very long in any one place, I suppose. But he knew a great deal about England, and England at that time, at the turn of the century, which was his great day, England represented, of course, the empire and the only people who knew how to travel. And he once told me, when we spoke about Atlantic trips, that he'd never travel in anything but a British vessel. And yet that is both very far and very close to this second subject, isn't it? It speaks of a nostalgia that's born of people who travel far from their homeland, and yet who love it very much, and who are rooted in their countryside.
It does indeed.
Very close. I remember taking it with Sir Edward to Paris. It was on the initiative of Fred Geisberg of the Gramophone Company, of HMV, who suggested that he knew that Sir Edward loved Paris, loved France, and was a great friend of Delius, and wanted to see Delius before it became too late. And so this would have been the opportunity for him to be brought over to Paris to conduct his work. And again, it was Enescu who rehearsed the orchestra. You know what the French orchestras are like. They are extremely alert, extremely brilliant, but on the other hand, not given to any false or real even sentimentality. And Enescu knew how to keep their attention, and they played the work very well. He rehearsed, I think we had 3 rehearsals on the work, which he did with extreme conscientiousness. So Eduard took over the last rehearsal, by which time the orchestra was completely prepared. And the audience appreciated the work, but one felt that it didn't correspond to their nature. I don't think the work has been played since in Paris.
Pity.
Well, it is a pity, and yet it isn't a pity in the sense that it belongs so completely
We understand
to
French
its...
music over here, though.
Yes, but there are some French works that we too wouldn't. Take the last sonata of Fauré for a piano and violin.
Yes.
There are certain works that belong to their own people in such an intimate and close way that they are not really ever completely exportable. Although Elgar would, I think, be appreciated in Germany and is already appreciated in the United States. But it is not a Mediterranean. He's not a Mediterranean composer.
No.
There are certain things that have never crossed the Alps or even the Channel. But I remember taking this work to Russia when I first went there in '45. I knew that it was during the war the Russians had had very little opportunity of hearing anything, except for they were very thankful for what they got over the BBC. And the musicians were as nailed to their sets as all the others who could possibly get at their sets. And what they heard of music that wasn't their own, or music they knew, was through the BBC. And they wanted the Elgar very much. I brought it and left the orchestration and the score with them, much to the exasperation of the publishers. But nonetheless, they were very grateful, and I was glad I did it. But it's a work that is peculiarly personal to anyone who plays it. You have to almost be born to it. And I was very sorry to, I'm very sorry always to see that this heritage of England is not as often played or as part of even of the violinists who grow up, who study everything else but the Elgar Concerto. I was glad to find that you have not overlooked it, nor has Anthony overlooked it. And that is that's a good thing. I was wondering, to come back, because I feel that when one has 2 such musicians in front of one, one doesn't talk about technicalities, because it's the conception that is interesting, and the conception which is so beautiful too. There's one thing I'm just wondering, whether it couldn't be somehow a little more a little more flamboyant. That is perhaps the word.
Yes.
Because he was, looking at him, he was anything but flamboyant. He was an English gentleman who you would have never guessed was a composer as well. Composers don't always look their part. Certainly English composers and his generation of composer, and he particularly, didn't look his part. He loved his hounds and the horses and the races, and would love to compose, but I don't think he would want to waste time talking about his own music. But I know that he was a great one in his heart for expansion, for exuberance, for color, for the orchestration. And you have caught beautifully all that is most deep and sensitive and intimate in it. Certain of the ta-dum, ta-dum, ti-da-da-dum, ti-da-da-dum, ta-da-dum, could stand just a little more.
May I ask what I would do with the phrases to carry that suggestion of yours? Would you like a more of an attack on the top?
More an attack, yes. Ta-dum, ta-dum, ti-da-da-dum.
Shall I try?
Yes, do try. Yes. Yes, that's it.
That sort of thing.
That's all. Ta-dum. That's it. Ta-dum, ta-dum, and that ta-dum, ta-dum, ti-dim, a little more burning.
Geoffrey,
You want to try that?
Certainly. Well, just from that part.
Ta-dum, that's it. I know. The figure of the triplet, with the pause before it, indicates a kind of breathlessness. Tee-dum, tee-dum. You can't wait to come in. Don't observe the exact division, tee-dum, tee-dum, tee, but rather anticipate as if you couldn't wait. Ta-dum, ta-dum, ti-dum, ti-dum. That is the quality, the breathless quality that it needs. Because your playing otherwise is not breathless. It's very controlled, very poised, and it could gain from the deliberate introduction of a certain element of impatience.
Stage,
yes, exactly. And that was the only thing I could think.
That's a very good point. Yes.
Otherwise, it's perfectly beautiful. Do you want to continue to the main tutti, to the next big tutti? Yes.
I'll try. Oh, were we to play this once again?
I think as we you can't play the G major place twice. It's impossible. If you hit it right once, you don't want